film look is something that is constantly talked about in the world of photography and filmmaking. There's a massive effort to recreate this film look without having to shoot on physical film. That's where film emulation plugins such as Dehancer come into play. Dehancer is a robust film emulation plugin with multiple tools that allow you to achieve the film look that you're going for. It's a plugin that's available for both photo and video editing software, and it has a lot of film looks that is recreated from a large variety of actual film stocks. Depending on your style, you can go with something that's heavily stylized, or you can go with something that's a little bit more subtle, which is more of the direction that I tend to go for. Dehancer reached out to me to test their plugin and share my thoughts. So I approached it in the way that I would any other tool that I use for my videos, focusing on the subtlety of the details rather than on a heavily stylized look. So let's take a look as to how I use Dehancer in Adobe Premiere Pro with some of the clips from the intro that you just watched. So now that we're in Premiere, let me show you the 3 examples that I picked. These shots are filmed on the same day for the same video, but from 3 different cameras. It's a different combination of camera and lenses. I wanted to test the versatility of Dehancer and also how well it can match footage from different sensors. Here we have a wide shot of a previous video. I'm going to add an adjustment layer to put Dehancer on that layer rather than using the actual clip. So let's put an adjustment layer. We're going to work in this manner today rather than adding it on the clip. Under Effects, I'm going to look for Dehancer under Film Emulation, and I'm going to add it to an adjustment layer. So right off the bat, as soon as you add Dehancer, it's going to look wrong. It's going to have a default setting for a look, and you have to change the settings to match what you've shot specifically. So you have to go to the Input tab and change according to your camera settings. And that's what we're going to do. So at the top of the list, we're going to go to Input, Source, we're going to go to Choose Camera, and in the list, you can see an expansive list of cameras. This one was particularly shot in a Canon R5C in log. The other thing is we're going to turn the print off, because that's automatically turned on when you add the effect. So now, let's go to the heart of Dehancer, which is the Film tab. This is where they have the different profiles, you can select them. You can have a very stylized look or a very subtle look. I'm going to select the one that I chose for this video, which is Fujicolor Natura 1600. Now in the Input tab, we're going to change some parameters in the overall base of the shot. So we're going to reduce our exposure a little bit, since we're a little bright. And a great thing that Dehancer lets you do is that you can use the monitor to check exposure with false color. False color is a tool I use a lot while shooting, and it allows me to pinpoint my exposure levels in the different parts of the shot. So if I turn on false color, I have overexposure in the sky in certain parts, my shadows are okay, I'm not really clipping too many things. And as I move the exposure compensation tab, you can see the changes that it makes to the shot. So right there I can see I'm not really clipping anything in the sky, but I'm starting to lose some stuff in the shadows. And I can turn the false color on and off to check where I am, and then also use my eye to see what I like for the shot as well. This tool allows you to have consistency from shot to shot. So now let's look at the Film Developer tab. This is where you get to choose how the film profile you selected gets processed. Film can look very different on how it's developed by chemicals, and this simulates the effects that different developing process has on contrast and the tone of analog film. So we're going to boost the contrast on this shot a little bit. We're going to move the gamma correction as well. We're going to reduce the color separation and boost the colors a little bit. Next, we're going to look at the Film Compression tab. This lets you fine-tune the latitude or dynamic range of the shot, as well as the tonal range of it. We're going to change the white point a little bit because we're starting to lose the highlights, and we want it to roll off a little bit nicer. And I can check the effect of my white point by using the false color monitor. Now let's look at the color head. This is where you can fine-tune the colors in your shot, and this approach is based on how film scanners allow color correction to happen when scanning analog film. I'm going to open the tabs and move these sliders because I find that a little bit easier. So I'm going to go a little towards the yellow, just to warm up the shots. I'm going to lean towards the magenta, and also towards the cyan. And to warm the overall shot, I'm also going to change the shadow tone and the midtone. And here, one of the great aspects of Dehancer is the film grain. This is not just a grain overlay. Dehancer actually analyzes the brightness and colors of your shot to reconstruct the grain characteristics depending on the grain that you've selected. Personally, I like very fine grain, so I'm gonna go for the 65mm in ISO 250. Now let's look at the Bloom tab. This effect disperses the highlights of the shot. Consider this the digital version of a mist filter on your camera. And lastly, I always like to add a vignette to all my shots. So what I like to do is I like to make it as dark as possible so I can see it, and then back it off to a level where I like it. And this allows you to control the feather, shape, and size of the vignette. And here it is. This is the look that I've created for this clip with Dehancer. So now let's look at the second clip that I've selected. I'm going to start it the same way. We're going to add an adjustment layer, and then we're going to select Dehancer to add to that layer. Again, right off the bat, the shot's not going to look right. We're going to have to change the same parameters as all the other shots. I'm going to turn off the grain for now. I'm going to go to the input, and I'm going to select my camera, which was a Sony FX30 shooting in S-Log 3 with a base ISO of 800. And again, to match our previous shot, we're going to select the same profile, which was Fujicolor Natura 1600. And we're going to check the false color to see where we land overall in the shot right off the bat. So we are in an okay spot. Nothing's really clipping, so we have a lot of room to move things around. So in this case, I'm actually going to brighten up the shot a little bit. Again, checking with my false color to make sure I'm landing where I want to be. And now let's move on to the film developer. We're going to enable the effect. I'm going to contrast boost. I'm going to increase the contrast a little bit. And then we're also going to boost our colors a little bit. Now we're going to move on to the film compression and make our white point roll off a little bit smoother, considering there's a lot of highlights in the shot. Let's move on to our color head, and this is where we can fine-tune the colors to match our previous shot. Now we're going to lean towards the yellow and magenta and cyan as well. But the changes don't have to be as drastic in this shot as opposed to the other one. Again, we're going to warm up our midtones and our shadows. And then similarly, we're going to match the film grain as well as the bloom from the previous shot. And I like to use comparison view to make sure that my shots are matching. One of the things that I really look at when using comparison view is look at my highlights, especially in my sky. And that could be a giveaway when shots aren't quite matching. And then I can make changes accordingly to make sure that my skies are matching as well as all other parts of the shot. And here it is. This is the second shot with Dehancer. So now let's look at our third shot, and I chose this shot in particular because it was shot with an iPhone. Cell phones nowadays give you a lot of versatility, and now that you can shoot in log formats, it expands a new world of filmmaking with mobile phones. So again, we're going to add the Dehancer to the adjustment layer. We're going to turn off some effects to begin with, and then we're going to go to Input and select our source, which in this case is an Apple iPhone and shot in Apple log. We're going to go to Film and select our Fujicolor Natura 1600 again. Now this shot's a little bit tricky because we have a very bright source to the left of the shot, but a very dark camera to the right side of it. So we want to make sure that we don't clip or crush anything in particular. So we're going to do a contrast boost and our gamma correction to make sure that we're landing in a nice sweet spot. We're going to go to the film compression and change our white point. In this case, it's going to affect it a lot how it rolls off from the left of the frame to the right of the frame. I'm going to check as the shot moves, you can see how some of the exposure changes because we're cutting some of the source out of the way. Now in the Expand tab, we're going to change our black point, which similarly to the highlight roll-off, we want to make sure that the roll-off in our shadows is also as smooth. Here in the color head, we're going to change our colors to match our previous two shots. And again, we're leaning more towards the warmer side. And here you can see how big or how little of changes you need to make depending on the camera that you choose or the lens that you have. Now here, once again, in comparison view, we're going to try and match things as close as possible. And a big thing to note with this clip is just making sure that our exposure lands correctly. And for this in particular, our last steps, we're going to add the matching film grain as well as the bloom. Lastly, we're going to check with false color just to see where we stand. We're not clipping any highlights particularly, but you can see in the camera that we're starting to crush some of the shadows. But I think there's still enough detail where it's not really going to affect the shot too much or make it unusable. And as we move the shot, it's not at all points that is completely crushed. And the other thing to note is we're not really clipping our highlights, which in my case is a lot worse than crushing your blacks, depending on the shot. And here's our third shot, which was shot with an iPhone. Overall, one of my favorite parts about Dehancer is the flexibility that it allows you to have. And that allows you to be very precise, especially when you're trying to match footage together from different sources. It sits in a nice spot where beginners can use this tool to expand their knowledge of color correction and color grading and creating a film look. And for the people that have experience in the color world, you can have very precise tools that you can use in a detailed manner. Dehancer also offers an app so you can have film emulations on your phone. That way you can create a look for any photos or videos directly on your mobile device. Thank you to Dehancer for reaching out and letting me be part of their community. If you'd like to try out Dehancer for yourself, you could use promo code Q10 for a 10% discount at checkout. Thank you again to Dehancer, and thank you to all of you for watching. I'll see you on the next one.